video on that screen. Let me just stay here for a second. Okay, we're live. All right, everybody. Hi there, I'm David Wilcock, and I'm here with the legend, the man who has defied death 4 times in a row. He runs from death, he dives over obstacles, he gets underneath the bed, he hides down there. He is a miracle. He is, let's switch over to my close shot here. He's a miracle, he's a wonder, he's our real good friend and companion on this interesting journey between life and death. He is Danny and Brinkley. Danny, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, David. And congratulations on the launch of your new book.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute, but we're going through some really sad times here on Earth. But within the sorrow, I feel, is the key to our transformation as well. I just want to say for everybody listening that I have always been really big on getting over our problems with race relations, because if we can't get it together with the races we have on Earth, how are we going to deal with extraterrestrial civilizations?
True.
If we're going to try to be able to meet people from other planets, well, we got to work this stuff out.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, look at, I've been around since the 60s, okay, watching the transformation. And I can honestly look at what's been happening and realize that from the childhood nature of racism in America, me in the 50s, to today, we are literally not a racist nation. I mean, there are issues, and we have rednecks, and we have everything, but in my 70 years, I have watched a transformation, and what I see in this rioting and looting, David, it's what gets me. We are not a racist nation. And that's an amazing revelation and a peaceful place for me to find. But here's what gets me about today. You go outside, and the sun is shining, and it's bright and beautiful, and it's summer. You come inside, and everywhere you look, we are killing each other. We're burning each other's stuff. We're destroying properties.
Well, let's be clear on we, though. I mean,
But we, the human race.
I've looked at a lot of scientific studies. I have one at the end of the last book, Ascension Mysteries, describing how actually the overall amount of war and conflict in the world is continually going down. The number of active wars,
I agree.
the number of deaths from terrorism, the number of deaths from war, all that stuff is dropping. The overall violence on Earth is decreasing. But I think you touched on a really important point that we've been talking about quite a bit here privately, and that is the concept of now in the media, we're seeing very little coverage of the fact that there are huge peaceful protests going on in all 50 states. And the violence is now not a factor, and it's been blamed on either far left or far right groups. But there can be no question that someone put out pallets of bricks for people to use in a riot. And then the question is, who might have done something like that? Who might have put out cans of gasoline? Who might have put out weapons that could be used to fire on people and just leave them out there in these certain locations? And this is where we get into some of the darker aspects of our society, the idea that there could be some sort of intrinsic plan to try to destabilize our society. And you and I have talked about this a lot. We've been on panels almost 20 years now at these conferences and stuff.
And good friends.
That's right.
All right, good friends. So good friends have open, unclarified conversation. Say something about
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about my audio, I'm sorry. It's just... So for those of you who are, complaining about static and audio beeping, I am sorry. There's nothing we can do about it. So there you go. we had a time to shoot at 12 o'clock, and we have audio interference problems. We don't know what they are. So I apologize.
Yeah, so without any question, there has to be a conspiracy, okay? When I look at politics growing up, in the South you were always politicians, you know, because the boll weevils elected people. Those 14 states known as quote unquote the Confederacy elected presidents. So, and they were basically Republicans, but they couldn't take a Republican banner because Lincoln created the Republican Party, and their reaction to that was the occupation, carpetbaggers of the South, you know, the whole destruction of the Southern culture, and that whole concept. Now, understanding when I was a kid, we had social clubs, and it was where people came together to decide issues that was going to execute throughout the state. Now, they may have been the social clubs.
And let's just keep going, and I'm cut to this real quick.
They may have been the social clubs, David, but they were what you would call the Klan. They were what you would call those organizations that come together and decide what's happening. I have absolutely no doubt that there is a greater game afoot. What I started with was politics. You grow up in politics and you look at how they operate. And if you look at the politics of a party in a presidential election, just there, and you look at the last election, just in those two places, you see literally the ability to try to overthrow the country, inside as well as outside influences. So do I believe that there is a larger, greater agenda at play? No doubt about it.
Right.
And so much of that stuff that I've heard you talk about through the years, and so much of little parts of my life of where I found myself in certain situations only reinforces the fact that there is a greater conspiracy.
Right.
See, this is the exciting part about what's happening now, okay? I mean, and the distance is, as your new book comes out, Saved by the Light is 25 years old this year. I wrote a book that keeps still selling. It still keeps selling. And when I look at you, and we have been friends for 20 years, and when I look at you and I see how far the evolution has come, and I look at our nation, I'm really happy about it. I'm happy about it, but we have to stop. We have to stop and pay attention to who and what we are.
Right.
Now. Or we will do exactly in Saved by the Light I said. And I think that's the problem, and I think that's why I'm glad I'm here today.
Well, that's good. Let's cut back to whatever it is, 2. There we go. Yeah, so I think that, and I'm sorry everybody about so I think what's happening with the audio is just a simple thing where we would need to have a preamp on your microphone. I think the fact we don't have a preamp is why we're getting that static. But, you know, this is live, and we don't really know how to fix this yet, so I do apologize, everybody, you know, and go ahead and complain if you want to, but, you know, this is what we got. At least we're doing it. At least we got it done. So, my attitude on this whole situation hasn't changed for many years. I look at our world and I look at the problems that we have in the world, and I'm seeing a need for people to be able to accept each other, to work through their differences, to find common ground, to find ways of getting along. And I think that we all need to step back from reactive consciousness, and that's what was so amazing. if you get into the idea that the deep state was behind these pallets of bricks being left behind in these riot areas, what were they really trying to do? Were they trying to pour gasoline on a fire?
Absolutely. But what's the coolest part about this, David, is people with their cell phones were putting it up on their telecast and putting it up on their Facebook. How do we know those bricks were put there? How do we know that? We know it from YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. People with their cell phones taking pictures of the bricks. Not some grand conspiracy, but people out marching for truth and justice and the American way, the right to protest. Come on. Nobody could take that away from Americans. Nobody.
Try turning my mic off and then on. Okay. Okay, we tried that. I don't know if that's going to do anything. Sorry about the static.
So when you get to know from people marching peacefully, taking their cell phones out and taking pictures, the same as we see with the issue with the killing of an officer, okay? This is somebody's cell phone.
Right.
You know, this is the power that Americans have in this issue. They can take their phone out and they can video it, and it can force America to deal with it. But what we got to do is not burn people's buildings and not shoot each other.
Absolutely.
This is the point.
Absolutely.
But I don't think, David, I'm going to go back to this point. I don't see it racist driven. I see it a part of people peacefully assembling and it becoming a controlled riot.
Well, and the thing that the deep state has always been the most afraid of is large-scale protesting. And we look back on what happened with Occupy Wall Street and how they were trying to, let's cut to my camera for a second. So we look back to like Occupy Wall Street and what was happening there, and the mainstream media started to drive a narrative where they took pictures of people defecating, in public. And they basically were able to take all the steam out of Occupy Wall Street, which was years ago now, around more like the time of the 2008 economic collapse and thereafter. Now that momentum is back, and so it's almost as if when you get to the point where you're having peaceful protests in massive numbers, this is the end of the line for the deep state. They're done.
And cell phones.
Yeah.
With cameras.
So the last thing they could have tried to do is turn it into a big giant race war, and that didn't work.
Nope.
It clearly has not happened.
We're not racist.
There was violence, there was problems, but it didn't really happen. So did that turning off the mic and turning it back on do anything? No. Okay.
But David, let me make this point when I say we're not racist. From growing up in the 50s to what I'm watching now, the difference between the interaction between Americans, no matter what color they are, is 1,000 times less than what I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's a very important point to make when I say we're not racist. We are nothing like when I grew up. And it makes me really, really proud. I can't stand what I'm watching happen. And I know there's a greater game afoot from listening to the information and paying attention. And also, when I was struck by lightning 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, I had a glimpse of what I now knew to be the future.
Right.
I wrote about this 25 years ago in Saved by the Light. I see what draws us together again, and it's just that common friendship and laughing and not being afraid to look at what really is going on and trying to figure out what to do that's the best thing to help people.
Mm-hmm. No, the frequencies are not overlapping. So for those of you who are tech nerds and you want to be all in our business, what appears to be happening is that I have to run these, we have these little belt pack microphones, and I'm going to have to get a preamp before I can run it into my switcher board, because the switcher board does not have an onboard preamp for whatever reason. So as a result of that, I'm having to really jack up the output volume on the belt receiver, which is causing you to hear static and RF noise, and I do apologize for that, everybody.
But David, can I say something? I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody that's out there, because for a lot of the program that David was doing and the teaching, I got a chance to look at the chats, because just being to sit over there and to listen and to watch it. And listening to watching the comments of how much you people care about what's happening. It's not complaining, except trying to make it the very best it could possibly be. I want to thank you for it. So, two different places, but still the same point.
And the challenge that we have is that you can't really test anything. You have to basically go live, because all of these mechanisms require you to be live to figure out what's going to go wrong. So we're learning together. You know, Danny, and obviously those who might not be aware of what you're about, I think that's relevant to bring in. You are one of the very first people to come forward about the near-death experience.
Well, yeah.
So this goes all the way back to Dr. Raymond Moody's seminal work, Life After Life, and the idea that it represents a moment in history where a medical doctor started to take this concept of an afterlife seriously. And a book was written about it. You were put in that book, and you decided to come forward after seeing Raymond Moody get annihilated by skeptics and critics and everything, having no idea that you would end up having a truly amazing career in a way that has never happened to me. The number of books you've sold, the fact that you were on Oprah 5 times, the fact that you were going all over the world, doing these tours everywhere. But what did you experience when you had clinical death that made all this interest around you? What was it that happened to you that was so interesting?
Okay, so let's frame it. It's 1975. I think I'm Superman. My life is going great. I served in the Marine Corps. I grew up in sports. I had a good identity and self-image of myself. Okay, then one afternoon in September the 17th at 7:05 p.m., I bought it. I got struck by lightning. Okay, and I went from tough guy, good shape, very conscious, gung-ho, blah, blah, prick, to a cripple.
Right.
And for the next over 40 years, I've been that. Okay? So, what happens is when you get struck by lightning, and you're burning and you're on fire, and you cannot move, you come to face yourself. This is what happens. You come and you will face yourself. And the kind of pain that I was in, it did not matter to me what happened. Anything was better than where I was.
Right.
And I could not move. I was paralyzed. Dead for 28 minutes, completely paralyzed for 6 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. On my Facebook the other day, they showed lightning striking the Washington Monument. And my mind rushed back, those 44 years ago. So it's like appropriate.
Yeah.
And the next thing is I'm out of my body. I'm above it, watching it. I can see, which I couldn't see when I was lying on the bed. I didn't feel any pain. And I was not breathing. I was pulsing. Kind of like our heart does. But I was aware of the pulse. Okay, some rhythm that existed within that framework. Okay, and I watched everything that was happening. And then as they put me in the ambulance, nobody heard of the near-death experience when I had this.
Right.
Like everybody who was before me. No one heard about it, and you didn't talk about it.
Right.
Because if you told your doctor, he'd tell you need to talk to your minister. Tell your minister, he'll tell you need to talk to your doctor, and they both will refer you to a psychiatrist. This is the 70s.
Right.
You know, people didn't believe that you were, the capability of going to the moon was already in the minds of people. But coming out of Vietnam, just where we are like now, coming out of those wars and looking at the violence in the streets, we're in the 60s again, early 70s again.
Yeah.
It's the same exact playbook. When I support what you say about it being this battle, well, I honestly believe that that's true. And they recreate the playbook.
Right.
And then you got to look at presidential elections. These are ruthless. Politics are blood sports. It is where gladiators can outwit the other so that you can, quote unquote, quid pro quo your issues to establish greater control or financial reward to your own district. Each of those things come into play, David. So when you can know that from a political point of view and know it's a presidential election, no matter what you see happening, you know it has that as an overtone. This is what it has as the overtone no matter what. And I don't know what Trump's doing. I have varying opinions of Trump. But to go to the limits from a political point of view, which is where we started this conversation, to go to it from a political point of view, the diversities of the groups of people that want to get rid of him makes me suspect.
Certainly, you know, the fact that the entire media for the duration of this presidency has been almost 100% anti, and that we know that these media organizations are run by 6 corporations, which are all part of this deep state thing.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pay a lot of attention to that. You got to take that beyond the scope of what you think is going on here. So,
Okay, so back to the point.
mhm.
When you want you lift out of your body,
It's in the kitchen.
when you lift out of your body, this is what becomes so important. You know, I didn't mean to get off on present day things, but what's important is this. There's a mechanism by which you leave this world. I have been dead 3 times, okay? I was struck by lightning and dead for 28 minutes. And then less than 2 years ago, I was clinically dead twice. I had to have open heart surgery for the 2nd time. I had to rebuild my heart, and I had to come out of surgery with no blood pressure, resuscitated. And then 5 days after that open heart surgery, I went into cardiac arrest twice and had to be resuscitated. I had the wildest near-death experience of my life this 4th time. I'm still assimilating the language that makes that work.
Right.
But I witnessed and watched myself being worked on by these doctors and watched the brilliance of some systems and the problems of other systems.
Let's try moving your belt pack. Maybe we put it on the table, see if that'll improve anything. That was an idea we got from the audience. Okay, now put it on the table here. Let's see if that does anything.
Probably won't.
Any difference in the sound? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, everybody, that when you're live streaming, anyway, we're getting a lot of feedback on this feedback, and I know what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to hook up a mixing board and put preamps on the mics, and then the preamps will eliminate this RF noise because it'll be a lot quieter at that point. But we're going to have to rewire the whole thing, and we'd have to stop the show to do that. I have a mixing board upstairs, but I think we should just keep going. So
I
when
agree. So back to being dead.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to get OCD. They don't like it. I'm sorry, but you know, this is what we got right now. So at least you can hear us and we can communicate.
And we love you.
And maybe what we'll do is we'll re-upload this afterwards and we'll do some audio improvements or something. So when you went into the afterlife, I think it's important for people to get a scope of the fact that our lives on Earth have this hidden agenda that we may not be aware of. So could you kind of lay out for us what really ends up happening to you when you have a near-death experience? What do you discover about the universe when you have a near-death experience?
You discover everything, but it depends on the near-death experience that people have. Mine were pretty cosmic, except for one. The third one was not as cosmic as the others. But first thing you come to realize is nobody dies. It does not happen. Once you can stop long enough and listen to people who've had near-death experiences, even if half of them are not telling the truth, you come to the conclusion that this is not the end. And I think it's so important, like why I wanted to have this conversation is, we have been leaving this world in numbers that we're being told that are happening. And we have people very, very sick. Well, I've left this world and I've been very, very sick.
Right.
Okay, so I can empathize with the situation because I have been that. Okay, I already been that. So I think when we come to that place and point of looking, we also have to add this to the mix, everybody. You are not going to die. It is not going to happen in any methodology or religious system that you hear. Their description of it, very few of them have any idea what they're talking about. An NDE experience lays it out from a lot of different ways, but it shows the structure of this world to the next world. And after going through this, David, 4 times, I can honestly say, without any question, nobody dies. But what that does is it creates the responsibility for why you are here now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're thinking about that somebody's going to die, then tell me who it is that was alive or is alive. If you think you can be scared to death and watch people die of a secret or an enemy virus, and you're worried about you dying, then who is it that's living right now? And what is that person living right now doing based on the information that comes from near-death experiences? Because we have to ground ourselves again. We have to find that place about who we are as spiritual beings, or the ethereal, energetic beings that moves from this particular dimension or reality of life into the next one. Okay? In Genesis it says there are 7 heavens. Okay? I can honestly say that I know of 4.
Okay.
Okay? I cannot say that I've seen.
The other 3 just weren't interesting enough.
Well, I don't know. I never got there. I only got where I got, right. Where I come from in my life is from here. If I hadn't died and I hadn't gone to hell in 4 out of 4 times, you've missed your chance at me. Okay? All right. Okay, so what I have left in life is how to help people understand that real, true spiritual identity of themselves without all that other stuff attached to it. You know, everybody creates religions and ceremonies and traditions. And I think that that's a great thing for people to do because it keeps them physically and mentally alerted to what they're ethereally and spiritually trying to accomplish in this life.
Right.
Okay, so that's important that it happens. Okay? But for me, there have to be a guide, a step to composite this. It's what I'm trying to work on. It's what we keep talking about. Okay, let's put together a way that you can build off of it. You can look at it. You can change your whole attitude about who you are based on who you are.
Okay, would you cut back to the middle shot? It looks as if the static is gone. We really don't understand this. We don't know what's going on.
It was the power of prayer of your listeners.
but we have beeping in the background. So we do live in Burbank. We have a lot of noise here, and so there's problems with RF interference like crazy. I don't think there's any good bandwidth we can be on, but we will keep trying to make this better as we go on. Anyway, so going back to this, it really seems to me as if fear is being promoted by the media.
Absolutely.
And the media, it would almost appear as if fear is like a product that they're trying to sell.
And I would agree.
And I don't think we've ever really seen such a dramatic example of this. We go back to the events that took place in the beginning of March, and cut to this one if you want. We go back to the events that took place in the beginning of March, and what we're seeing now is, hey, you know, the stuff that David was saying right at the beginning, like not even a week in, it's all true. It all panned out as being true. Well, maybe not the vials being smuggled in. You haven't heard that officially yet, and apparently, according to the letter between Q and R, or I said P and R. There we go. Anyway, we find out that this problem has not gone away. We are still in a society that lives with a certain degree of racism and a certain degree of fear and a certain degree of naivete, let's say. And so we had our mainstream media very, very strongly pushing a certain narrative, and it got extremely, extremely dangerous for people like me trying to talk to you about this in what should be a publicly accessible utility, and yet it's being controlled, and we're having severe, severe problems with freedom of speech. It's really ridiculous.
A very enlightening point of view, David, based on there is a grander series of events at play. When you can limit your freedom of speech, and some corporations can set the rules by which people interact with each other, and they can set the rules for what can be said, okay, then that is called blocking freedom of speech. Yeah. That is the foundation of American principles, and the way the mainstream media is doing and dealing with and what they're doing only reinforces the fact of what you're saying. Think about it.
Yeah.
They say that freedom of speech is limited based on it doesn't fit whether it's good for the public or not. The public decides what's good for them or not, not some corporation. And when you see all of them not putting on the news the things that everyday Americans are showing everyday Americans. They're putting it up on their little YouTube site, on their Instagram. They're showing everyday Americans what's really happening out there. Okay, so they're busted. So back to the grander conspiracy.
Well, it's I think a very big part of why people are doing these protests is the enormous frustration over the fact that we were sold something that was supposed to be. You look at the videos when this whole thing first started coming in from China, and you got dead people lying in the middle of the grocery store. You remember we watched those videos together when we were here.
Guy falling at...
Freaking crazy.
Guy dropping at the bus stop.
There's dead people lying on the ground in China, supposedly lying on the ground, and society is too crazy to even pick up the body. That's the kind of fear that was being seeded in January.
The plague.
Yeah, like it's going to be this outrageously intense mass die-off where everybody is dying, and if you breathe, you're going to catch this thing. And then, well, the only way we can stop this absolutely insane plague is we got to ruin the economy. We got to ruin the world. Now on the tail end of it...
Let me ask you something. When you say that, the moment you say ruin the economy, once again, David, shift to a greater purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay, rioting, when you're frustrated, you've been living in the house with your relatives. Okay, and you've been living with your relatives, okay? Then you're going to be stressed because you have to face yourself and you have to face your relationships, and you realize that people aren't talking to each other. They're either on their phone or they're away from each other. Then you give them a reason that they don't have to social distance, and it's the summer and they get to get out of the house. I'd be going to the riot if I was 23. I'd be going down there to march. I wouldn't be rioting or doing anything. But if I could get out of the house in the summer, I can get out of the house, and George Soros is paying me $15 an hour. I'm taking my ass on down there. I'm sorry. You know, and when you're looking at the age group and you watch the people of it, it's easy to understand that. But when you start to talk about shutting down businesses based on 0.02%, that's a bigger cry. You're destroying the small business that America's built on.
And we had those numbers, the 0.02%, way back at the beginning. There were studies coming in from Italy right away. There was epidemiologists, like I talked about. The guy was calling the Jimi Hendrix of epidemiologists. And then we also are seeing that the projections from our own government already knew what it was going to be before. National Institute of Health, things like this. Then we get these numbers that are drastically inflated. Oh, it could be 5%. It could be 3.4%.
From the WHO.
And then we're now looking at this going, okay, well, it wasn't a big deal for most people, right? This crisis did not affect a sizable majority of our population, not even a sizable minority of our population.
And those that it did affect had very few symptoms.
I mean, we think you got it, right? Because you went to International UFO Congress, and this is a big, big event in Laughlin, Nevada. Everybody's hugging each other, everybody's talking. And when was that? That was like late February, right? Something like that. So you went there, everybody's around, and then immediately, and I knew, I was like, I remember telling you, Danny, and I don't know about this, you know, but you came back and you were really, really, really sick.
Really, really, really sick.
I mean, it was really scary.
Yeah, well,
We thought we were going to lose you there. You pulled through it. We also had a notary come to our house, and she was, you can go over here for a sec, yeah. We had a notary come to our house, and she got it in January, but the interesting thing was they had a party, and it was in early January here in Los Angeles. She has a party. Her family all got really, really, really sick, like ridiculously, insanely sick. She got it as well. She didn't test positive when they took these tests. And I just saw this thing today about how so many of the tests that were even the authenticated tests that were being used are now being recalled because they're not accurate. You remember what happened with the president of, I think it was Zambia or Zimbabwe or one of those.
Zambia.
Yeah, Zambia. He's a molecular biologist, and he tested things like papaya and goats and they all tested positive.
Yeah, and the test came from China.
And don't you think?
So could they not have already been tainted? I mean, those things, you have to stop and think them for a moment, you know? This is what you have to do. This is the scary part about it. There's so much garbage out there in the world because everybody creates their own information because they watch the mainstream media do it, okay? We know that they signed executive orders that legalized propaganda. It was a Cold War issue that came, I think Kennedy did it once, but we know that Bush and Obama did it. Okay, they signed propaganda orders so that you could feed propaganda out, so you could affect the emotional ideals of another nation's identity of America, projecting propaganda. We know those executive orders exist. We know that. Okay, that's the cover that's used by the quote-unquote mainstream media. What I care about is like this show, this program, getting that kind of information out there. I'm not going to tell people what to do, okay? But I am a survivor, all right? I can survive, and they have to take a good look today and start thinking in those mindsets.
Tanzania was the name of the country. It's.
And see,
I
thank
feel.
you,
I feel
and-
like we are tiptoeing through a gigantic field of landmines, even trying to talk about this on a supposedly public utility, the one that we're using. It's extremely dangerous for us to have this conversation. I don't want to lose my channel. At the same time, I did talk with complete fearlessness back in April, before it really got to be a crackdown. But I think enough time has passed now that hopefully we can get away with this and not lose our channel just by being vague. But I want you guys to understand how real it is for somebody like me dealing with this institutionalized censorship, that if you have a certain opinion, you are not allowed to put that opinion out there to the world. And this opinion that you're not allowed to have threatens the most powerful people on the planet. Isn't that interesting?
Think about
Isn't
it.
that interesting?
If you're putting out bricks and you see a video of a phone camera, somebody's cell phone camera, videoing the police unloading the bricks.
Police.
The
Yeah.
police car.
That's right, we
it
watched
says
that.
police unloading the bricks.
That's insanity.
And wait, the two guys are upstairs in their hotel, in their apartment. It's got to be the 3rd floor or the 4th floor apartment building. They're drinking beers. One of them looks out the window and sees the police, and it's on YouTube, sees the police doing this.
Well, it
Okay.
was. It's probably not going to
Well,
be
but
now.
exactly like you said. That's places where you stop, you know, you just stop and
Oh, man.
you shake your head that, like the person that's trying to, the 50 people that's trying to correct the sound on this.
Everybody's an expert too, I
Yeah,
guess.
but no, I'm not going to go there, Dave. I'm not going there. I am thankful.
I know.
I am, but that's
I know.
it.
I'm sorry, everybody.
I
really
am thankful to,
It's so annoying.
but to you. But it's for me, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to the people that care enough to do everything to make a difference, like the people who videoed it and was not afraid to show it to us, and we got a chance to see it before they could catch them. Okay?
Well,
before they could catch them, excuse me.
you had to be the father figure. You put your foot down. You said, "David, we're going live tomorrow
That's
at
it.
noon. That's it.
That's enough.
That's it."
That's enough of it. People deserve to have a calm place to realize, first, you're not going to die, okay? And everything you think about that you're going to die, it's not going to happen. If you look at and think about for a minute, everybody, I've been dead so many times it's like a joke. But I've been a hospice volunteer for 42 years. And I have thousands, tens of thousands of hours at the bedside. Okay, tens of thousands of hours about the bedside, about people going from this world to the next. But let me make this point indelible. What I pay attention is how the body dies. I pay attention to the spiritual nature of the person with no problem. But I pay attention to how does that body die? Okay, so if it's a virus, I would look at the virus, the sequencing of the virus, what it does, and how does it kill you, okay? No one of the 73 reports I've looked at that describes how this virus kills you, only one of them makes any sense based on how the body shuts itself down.
Right.
And if I talked about it, we would definitely be off the air.
I know.
And I know that.
I
So
know.
remember, everybody, here's the most fun part about it. We win. If you look at Saved by the Light, where this all began, here's what happened. I went through this experience, but I went to the same hospital where Raymond Moody, a PhD in philosophy, decided he wanted to become a forensic psychiatrist. and he decided to go to the University of Georgia Medical School. Well, when I got struck by lightning, Raymond was a medical student at the same place that they brought me in to the hospital when they brought me in. Okay. So the relationship between Raymond and I grew because the guy was in the newspaper, guy survives being struck by lightning, blah, 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 blah. I never remembered a conversation that I had between me and the reporter. I don't remember none of that.
Wow.
For 3 days, I have no idea. I mean, think about it. I am on fire and burning and I can't see and everything hurts. I cannot move and they're sticking these needles in my muscles in my legs,
Jeez.
trying to find a nerve. I don't feel it. I could watch it and see it, but
Really?
nothing was happening. I could,
No nerves in your legs at all.
looking,
Wow.
sticking these needles in there, and then these guys from New York came in from some experts in this, and they wanted to poke around. I remember vaguely that stuff. Okay, so Raymond, I was completely going crazy, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, most people, when they think of a near-death experience, they think, oh, well, maybe he had a heart attack, and then the heart attack went away, and they resuscitated his heart, they jump-started his heart, he comes back. The degree to which your body was screwed by this lightning, and what you've told me, and as we've been hanging out these last few weeks, I'm an empath, and I can feel the pain as you're describing it to me, and it is just some of the stories that you've told me, which I really don't want us to go into.
No, we
The
don't.
severity of it, it's unimaginable. You would expect that that death would be much less painful than what you're telling me you actually did go through. Like my vision of death is less painful than what you've described, and that changed my opinion of things when you told me about it.
Yeah, I just don't. The whole world doesn't need to go through all that I go through from being struck by lightning. Open heart surgery, brain surgery, open heart surgery. Come on. Pain? You think I don't know pain? Rebuild my heart, and they tell Catherine and my brother and my sister that I might make it 10 days.
Jeez.
Come on. And I got a heart rate of 12%. And look where it is now. But here's the point. For me personally, I have a reason to live based on my understanding of death. I have a reason to live. And I know this to be an unequivocal fact.
Are there racists in the afterlife?
No, they don't even understand that. Okay? And let me tell you something. When I was listening to you tell the story, and I won't say the mythology of how people get to the earth, and the Marduk or Mar, whatever that planet was, and
The Great Mars Migration. Yeah.
okay,
That's
and
one of the
how
things we
that
talk about.
happened, and where Bigfoot and all the unexplained connections between Magnum and Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and all of those. What you were talking about made more sense to me, okay, looking at it from a point of view that you were delivering, and how we have 5 races, and how all that comes about based on what this planet is. It made sense to me, David. It made cognitive sense to me in my knowledge and understanding about death and my obsession with the Maya, okay?
Well, let me interject then just a little bit on this. So what Danny is referring to is obviously some of the more contentious parts of the work that we're doing. And interestingly enough, because you did bring it up,
About damn
we
time.
finally have this.
It's
We
about
finally got it
damn
done.
time, David.
And I actually got a copy sent to me. Because for whatever reason, I was supposed to get my sample copies from the publisher. They never
Okay.
came. So this
Hold
is the
it
new
up
one,
like
everybody.
this, David.
It
Please,
just came
everybody, go buy this book. Please, everybody, go buy this book. Based on this sentence, by reading this book, we may well find ourselves awakening within the dream that we once were so convinced was reality. That is worth buying and reading this book. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm like 90 pages in.
It took me 3 years to write this, and you and I joked about that.
For
'Cause
years.
You've been writing your book for, what was it, 8
8
years?
years.
So that makes me feel not quite as bad. But I never had as much difficulty writing a book as I did writing this one. And we are really, in this case, tearing the lid off of the intrinsic hidden spiritual reality that we're all a part of.
Which we have to focus on.
So you were mentioning this concept of migrations and this concept of people coming here from different planets, and that is one of the things that we discuss in Awakening in the Dream. But in this case, we discuss it more from the law of one side, whereas in the Ascension Mysteries, we discuss it more from the insider aspect, where it appears that, so I'll just give you the short version of the story, and let's cut to my angle, yeah. So we've done YouTube videos on this before, so even if you have not purchased any of our products, all this narrative is widely available online. The idea is that the asteroid belt apparently was originally a planet that was destroyed, and that it was inhabited by people who were very similar to the way that we look, but they had elongated skulls and they were taller, they were giants. Apparently, a small number of those people did survive and make it to Earth. They interbred here, they cloned themselves out, and they became the ruling elite, and they preserved their bloodlines, and this is supposedly the root of what we call the Illuminati. So the people from the Illuminati, you could say, if you believe what their hidden secret religion teaches, it appears that they are descendants of our next door neighbor planet that was once like Earth, that got destroyed by their own warlike actions, and they came here. In the new book that I just finished writing, Awakening in the Dream, I take this from the perspective of the Law of One, which also describes exactly the same thing. It says that there was an exploded planet that turned into the asteroid belt. It says that there were people on Mars, which NASA, as of 2012, said Mars was once like Earth. They all came here through reincarnation to work off their karma. So the basic bottom line that we get to in a book like Awakening in the Dream is that we are all going through some kind of a self-evaluation process as we live our lives. We are not being judged by some other thing. We're not being judged by some God that's separate from us. We make our own.
I agree with that 100%. I have absolutely no problem in the mindset about what that is. None. Because watch, when you stop long enough to look at what the near-death experience teaches, and I know I harp on this, David, all the time, but people are missing the point. When you look at how it teaches you about this life is about co-creating. It's about taking the divine flow moving through you, and it's moving through just like a cell phone. If you live in downtown LA, you have 80,000 phone calls passing through you each and every hour.
Streaming video, everything, yeah.
And it's passing through you. You can measure it on the outside of you, you can measure it inside of you, and you can measure it passing through you. Okay, well, these energetic patterns are happening now, no matter what anybody says or thinks, and they're happening now at a higher rate. I believe those forces that are trying to control and manipulate where we are, and to bring back psychologies that existed in the formation and the food riots and the gas riots and all the racism of the 70s, they're trying to recreate that as a manifesting control mechanism. This is 2020, okay? Yeah. So when I look at it from that point, you are a co-creator. There are those divine energies that are flowing through you, and I'm aware of them. There's nowhere, it's like some people were enlightened in life. I was enlightening in life, you know? I didn't come here by any choice. There was nothing that I did. And I used to laugh and say to myself, people say, Daniel, it's so important, the stuff that you're saying and the things that you've been through. I said, how important could I be? God had to call me on the telephone. Now, how important could that be? So,
All right, because the lightning came through the telephone.
came down the phone line, sitting just like this. But this is let me tell you my great moment with my sense of humor with God. Watch this. I have a great relationship with God. I think she's funny. Okay, and for my God, based on that I don't die and I don't go to hell, from my perspective is how entertaining anything is to me.
Right.
I measure things by entertainment value. So my God is the most entertaining, so watch. People say, Daniel, wonder why they chose you. I'm sitting on the side of the bed holding the telephone. And I'm talking like it comes down the phone line. And it comes down the side, didn't go through the phone line. It melted the phone. It hit me in the head, it went down my spine, welded the nails of the heels of my shoes to the floor, throws me in the air, suspends me in the air, throws me back down. That was September the 17th at 7:05 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon during a thunderstorm.
What were you talking about right before it happened?
Backing a 1938 LaSalle out of a garage and breaking the garage door. I had gone away and come back, and I liked old cars, and I bought this car. It was a LaSalle, and backing it out, the guy hit the garage door, and the lady was in her late 80s, and she was mad because it wasn't fixed. So I was talking to the person who was supposed to fix it.
So most people don't have a habitat in their mind for getting struck by lightning and then having your body thrown up into the air. So were you aware that your body had just been completely screwed by something? Like what was going through your mind as this lightning came through the phone?
I could not move. I could not see. And it was like I was drinking battery acid. I could not move and I could not see. And I'm trying to find a corner. I do not know what it was, David. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was lightning. I didn't know any of that crap.
It's horrible.
I mean, I cannot position myself. I cannot do anything. So the ultimate
Were you aware of like lying on the bed after you fell down?
I didn't know where I was.
Wow.
I was trying to think of a corner. How do you get to a corner? If I could move my feet so I could push myself to a corner, so I had a peripheral range in defense. This is how my mind works.
Right.
I got a peripheral range of defense if I could find a corner. Okay, so
So you went into like a core survival mode.
Exactly,
With
100.
your military training, it gave you.
If you get blown up, you know, you got to regroup. You got to jump out of a helicopter. You got to roll and set up a perimeter. I don't care if you only have one hand and one leg.
Right.
That's what this is what your job description is. This is what you got to do. That's the end of the conversation. So watch. My relationship with God. That place I try to get people, and I use God, that's a German word, but there is a divine energy that has a higher consciousness that operates here. And every single one of us has direct access to it. Every single one of us. And now it is so sensitive at this time to be able to attune to it that it takes less energy and less focus to achieve it. So watch how funny. If I go to get out of line, it's September the 17th, 7:05 p.m., 1975, struck by lightning. Wednesday afternoon during a thunderstorm. It's Monday, 1997. The doctor comes in and he says, Daniel, we cannot stop the bleeding. He said, we're going to have to do brain surgery. That means we're going to have to cut your scalp and take this part of your skull off.
Nice.
And cauterize and repair those 5 subdural hematomas you have in 2 places in your brain. Here, here, and here.
So am I reading this right in saying that you got struck by lightning twice? That it happened again?
That was in 1978 in May. I got struck by lightning twice. doing the exact same thing 3 years apart.
Really?
Okay, now this is the,
That's crazy.
no, but what it is it's true. And here's the funny part about it. We're at 1997. The doctor comes in. It's Monday. And he said, Daniel, you cannot. I said, Doc, I can't take it. Art Bell is coming to see me. I can't take it. I cannot take it anymore. My blood is pumping out of my brain and forcing my brain against my skull, and I could not focus. Okay. So he left, and you can see I could only half pay attention to him. And he came back then and he said, we're going in Wednesday morning. That's it. We're going to go in Wednesday morning. And now I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. So I got hit in the head by lightning here. Got hit in by the head by lightning here.
Mm-hmm.
And on September 17th at 7:05 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in 1997, they decided to drill holes in my head to drain the blood out before they did brain surgery. And they drilled the first hole right here.
Jeez.
That's funny.
That is funny.
Okay.
Right on the other side.
Exactly.
Of where it happened.
At 12 hours. September the 17th at 7:05 p.m. 1975 on a Wednesday
Right.
afternoon during a
So
thunderstorm.
keep talking to them, and I'm going to get you a handheld mic because that might solve the problem. So then everybody will stop complaining.
Okay, so once you realize that there are synchronicities in your life, you learn to pay attention to them. So what I started to do was pay attention to what was happening to me based on those events. What do I do? You know, David, life is uniquely marvelous. And I believe that what this life is about practicing being as divinely focused as you can, to be a co-creator, okay, to co-create. And that becomes the most important thing. Why? Because until you realize that, and until you look at that, you lose so much about who you are and so much of the opportunities that have come in this life. And I think that that's important. So when you look at how this planet exists and is structured, and that could it possibly be a dream, and we awaken to that reality, I believe that those forces that are controlling what is going on, that those forces that know as much as we know, or like I say, I know, or David knows, about what is happening now as this planet and this particular level of consciousness and dimensional reality is unfolding. And we have to plan and structure for it. I always knew that this time would come. Everybody goes back and remembers, I always said that the battle for the souls of humankind would be fought in healthcare. And the day that came, and I have been saying that for 43 years. Everybody who knows me has to hear that. Well, everybody, that time has come. We are there. The battles for the souls of humankind has become worldwide. And we put ourselves based on what I saw in the original boxes of knowledge in 1975. We're at that juncture where we are either changing or we're not changing. And how would I know? When I wrote Saved by the Light in 1993, it was based on events that had happened in 1975 because I saw the beginning of the battle for the souls of humankind and healthcare begin to formulate itself. So I think that based on looking at the boxes of knowledge from Saved by the Light, which turned out to be the future, I always thought it was something I was supposed to do to stay on task. So that I always knew where I was supposed to be focusing, and mine was dealing with palliative and end-of-life care. So that's where I focused myself, David, as I went through all of this.
Your mic is fine now that David turned his off, so just keep talking.
So while we start to really look at all this, you know, I am amazed that we have evolved as far as we've come. And I'm even more amazed and more appreciative of this fact, that we are nothing like people think we are. We are not overly racist. We have our problems, everybody. This is what we have. But I'll say it like I always say it. We are spiritual beings. Great, powerful, and mighty spiritual beings with dignity, direction, and purpose. And my main goal and objective is to give me the benefit of the doubt, to prove that to you and to teach that to you. Because this is the point where, come on, if the battle for the souls of humankind is on, if it's on, and the power is in our own hands to determine where our health will be, where our health will be, that encompasses everything. War and pestilence and GMO foods and exercise and lifestyle and wasting plastic and destruction of a planet. Who would ever thought in 1975 in a boxes of knowledge of 13 beings of light, I being dead, I would ever have seen or put it in a phraseology that as I look at it now, it's amazing. What is the most amazing thing about it is who we are, who we really are as spiritual beings. So as awakening to the dream becomes now a part of reality and David's new book comes out, I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy, but while he's doing what he's doing, I'd like to read something to you from Saved by the Light, published in 1994, about these boxes of knowledge. Box 12, remember this was written in 1993 based on magazine articles from, articles that I had written down in a spiral notebook in 1975. Says box 12, technology and viruses. The 11th box was gone and I was in the 12th box. It was a vision addressing an important and distant event that would begin in the 90s. This was 1975. An engineer would create a chip, DNA chip, that created a biological virus. This is me trying to understand and explain what I was perceiving. That would be used to manufacture computer chips. The discovery, which would be software as opposed to a chip, but the chip technology and the speed of the delivery of the software is the key. The discovery allowed for huge strides in science and technology, Japan, China, countries in the Pacific Rim, and experienced boom times, the advancements of computer internet technology to great magnitude. Computer chips produced from this process found their way into virtually every form of technology: cars, airplanes, vacuum cleaners, blenders. But by the turn of the century, this man would be among the richest. So rich, he had a stranglehold on the world's economy. I won't say the name of the software giant that is very interested in controlling the welfare and healthcare of America. But gradually he succumbs to his own power and begins to think of himself as a deity on greater control for the world. With extra control, he could begin to rule. His rule of method was everyone in the world was mandated by law to have one of these computer chips inserted under their skin. The chip contained all the identification and individual's personal information. If a government agency wanted to know something, all they had to do was scan the chip with a special device. By doing so, it would discover everything about you, where you worked, lived, your medical records, and whatever illness you might have, and it could be programmed to limit, dissolve, and kill you with a viral substance it's made of. It was 1975, everybody. Okay, who would have thought that the battle for the souls of humankind is happening now? And if you look at patents, and you're paying attention to the patents, there is no place I can go. I have nowhere to run. I have no excuses that I can make about that, what I believe all of us came here for. And what all is going on in the world today depends on us. You know, it depends on us. So having that depend on us and awakening to the dream, which is me having fun picking at David, and watching the joy in the relationship between Elizabeth and David has been a lot of fun for me in this. But here's where I am, everybody. Come on. We are not 1970. We're 2020. And yeah, we have brutalism and we have police with a lot of issues. But defunding the police, who in the world believes that? Who in the world's going to listen to that? Nobody's going to listen to that. That's all crazy. What we have to do is understand what's happening to the police officers. The same thing that's happening to first alert and first responders. If you look at what goes on with first responders in public safety today, they all have PTSD. One time you're sitting around the fire station or the public safety station, and then all of a sudden you go and pull burning people out of a fire or a car wreck where someone dies, and then you come back and finish your pizza. Think about what's happening to those people, and think about now knowing that this is happening, what we have to honestly look at ourselves and do. So if that battle is going on, and which I am absolutely convinced, then being here on this Sunday afternoon and being a part of what David and Elizabeth are trying to do, it's a joy for me, and it's a pleasure.
We're trying. We're trying. But we're doing it. We're getting it done. Does that improve the audio? Does that improve the...
I'm not sure, because I do not hear anything.
You don't hear anything of me?
I don't, but maybe, I don't know if they do.
Let me take a look. Keep talking.
Well, now I get to tell my favorite fairy tale. No. So now, here's where the next part of the box will go. Here's where I think we are based on knowing that maybe 90% of all these things that I have seen in 1975 and wrote down 25 years ago are happening. We'll either catch on about who we are and what our purpose here is, or we won't. And like I said in the opening of the show, everybody, come on. The sun is shining. Summer is here. We're in the spring, and soon it will be summer. Fresh air and breathing and the ocean. And you come inside and turn the television on, and we're killing each other, and we're destroying each other's property. That's all crazy, everybody. We are spiritual beings. Spiritual being can never see itself. A spiritual being can never see itself as a victim. It is not possible. So whatever's created victimhood in each of our minds, and now as it is expressed in our hearts, we must all deal with, whatever it is. I'm trying to find a way, and finishing this book, 10 Things to Know, because I'll tell you why. When you spend tens of thousands of hours at the bedside, and you watch what happens, and you watch someone lose a child, or you watch someone losing their mother or someone losing their father, you realize that couples don't talk, that they don't have a conversational structure by which to help the other one deal with loss, bereavement, and grief. I have seen this over and over and over again. So I sat down to write this book so that it would have a place that each could give each other. 10 things to know before you go. I am so focused on palliative and end-of-life care and how people see themselves based on what I have been through and what I have witnessed over the last 40 years. And so the next point in where David and I were talking, and I'm sorry I went off on that, was this. I decided to write Saved by the Light because I was not going to talk about near-death experiences. I had supported Raymond and met Raymond and became really good friends with Raymond because that's one funny human being. But in 1990, I decided to go and see Raymond. 91, I had open heart surgery for the first time, and lightning has done me in, everybody. And I had decided, when I decided not to have the open heart surgery, my father called Raymond. Raymond flew in, came to the airport. Came from the airport to the hospital and begged me to stay to help him. And I think that was the point I decided to stay. So when I got up a year and a half later, I went to see Raymond. It was hard because Raymond is a philosopher. He may be a psychiatrist, but he's a philosopher. And what I witnessed was that the whole world he was trying to bring information to, that people were recording these near-death experiences. And I had been around him since late 1976, early 1977. I had been around him, and he was devastated. And so I decided that I would write a book about it. And I sat down and talked with all the players, the people, and I said, okay. And what I wanted to put in was the boxes of knowledge, which everybody fought me about putting them in. The same thing happened in Secrets of the Light. If you have an original Secrets of the Light, it has the prophecies in it. But they're not new prophecies. They're me being Daniel Brinkley, looking at the boxes of knowledge and being able to look at those boxes of knowledge and see probable possibilities of things that will occur, like I see now. Okay, so in Secrets, which is probably 8 or 9 or 10 years old, I never missed a single one. Everything I said that would happen happened. But still, we're at 1975. Okay, so we sit at the precipice now of taking control of our identity and who we are, or not. And this is what brings me back. This is what makes me move forward. Because the same as when I wrote Secrets of the Light, I didn't have a choice. You know, hey, everybody, if you breathe in, you leave it. And when David was talking earlier about fear, let me show you a spiritual point about fear based on what happens when you don't breathe. I know what happens when you don't breathe. I have been without breath. So what breath does is this. If I make you afraid, then you shorten your breath. They become short and shallow, which blocks the amount of oxygen getting into your system. You know, air is basically nitrogen, 78 or 9%, and 21% oxygen. If you're frightened, you're going to breathe shallowly. Think about it from this point, everybody, and it's hard, but think about it. If you had to be thankful for something in your life, it better be your breath. Because without that, you're not here. No matter what you say, no matter how much you talk, and you better breathe X amount of times per minute. So it's not like something you think ahead about. It's something you do a bunch of times per minute. They even measure how many breaths, okay. Well, if that's the power by which the invisible force moves in and out of you, and you're allowed to stay here in this dimension, then how much gratitude do you give your breath? And how often in a day do you stop, be thankful for it, thankful for your autonomic system, and pay attention to how deep you're breathing? I do it 3 to 4 times a day. Okay, but if you think about what Dave was talking about, fear-driven, and you look at fear creates shortness of breath, that is something designed to cause, to happen, to keep you from breathing deep, being calm, and allowing the access to the spiritual levels of consciousness that already exist around you. Thank you, David. I've been waiting years to say that.
Yeah, well, keep going.
Keep going, Daniel. You're all we got right now.
You're the show.
Okay, well, this is even better. Okay, now let's get back to why people need to pay attention to having conversations with each other that are not violent. Why? Because watch, everybody. If you lose a child, what are the chances of a relationship surviving that? The only way it survives it is if you have a conversational place. I used to have to call it executive privilege. So I would shut up and listen. And it has always existed in relationships, but people have to listen and pay attention to the fact that we need to listen to each other. You can't listen and talk. So that's why I was writing this book, because it is the same crisis point that I was at Saved by the Light. I want to design a program, everybody, that helps you understand this. I created the Twilight Brigade because everybody's going to be a hospice volunteer sooner or later. Everybody. And the more you know about this thing we call death, the more powerful you become in this thing we call life. And what we have right now is this thing called life. And we must focus on it. We must empower ourselves to believe in it. And we must move forward in the way that we're doing it. It is certainly good to see your charming, handsome face.
Well, we at least figured out how to get audio to work to some degree. So how do I sound right now? Can you?
We're just going to wait until they,
Yeah.
until they tell us.
I mean, we're already an hour and a half in since it started, believe it or not.
And we're right back to fear.
Well, there's only so much we can worry about how our audio works, and at a certain point we have to work with a solution, and so the solution right now is that your mic works and mine doesn't. So I'm just going to talk really loud so that your mic hopefully picks up my voice well enough that we can finish the show. It's super, 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 super frustrating. And I love to get angry on camera. Everybody knows that. So this is it, folks. You're getting it again. I'm very, very upset.
But you got to look at everything else that's occurring around it, though, David. Come on. Look at everything else. Like when you were describing being empathic, which I watch. You know, you can't tell me that you're not, because I see your reactions. And we have been friends a long, long time.
That's true.
And what most people don't realize, we've been very close friends for a long, long time. Why? Because we get the greatest enjoyment out of making fun of each other.
That's true. I can make fun of you and get away with it.
Yeah. Well, I can make fun of you and get away with
That's
it.
true.
So in that friendship, so when you look at the kind of stuff that's going on around, that's happening around us, and it fits right into what I believe I was shown 44 years ago when I was dead, I have no choice but to react. We have, like I said, David, we have to go on the air because, hey, everybody, if we catch up and we get smart like we are being smart, and we're showing corruption with our cell phones, we're showing corruption. People are strong enough to record it and put it up and give us a chance to see it, just like those people trying to help fix this audio. That is about the greatness of the spiritual nature of being an American, of being worldwide. And come on, this is what's so important, everybody. We're winning this. No matter what anybody says, we're winning. But please do not be afraid. Nobody dies and nobody goes to hell. And why I say that is I've never been there yet. Okay? And in the 70s, a woman came up to me and she said, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. With the kind of personality that you have, Mr. Brinkley, what about hail? Now, you think I have a bad Southern accent. What about when you hear somebody say hail?
Hey, yo.
I said, honey, let me tell you something. When I was over there, they didn't bring it up, and I damn sure didn't bring it up. Okay? So let me give you a piece of advice. When you lift out of your body and you get down the tunnel and you get in that radiant being of light and you get met by that being of light like everybody says, but let me tell you that being of light is, that being of light you're going to meet is you, everybody. Don't ever fool that you think that Jesus, Buddha, Allah, Muhammad, Krishna, all that, those names that you're giving that being is your higher self coming to welcome that part of you home. Trust me, it'll be true. But when you see that being of light, the first thing you start doing is yelling, where's hell? Where's hell? And I promise you, honey, there's a good chance based on getting back home that you can have yourself a hellish experience. No problem. But if they didn't bring it up, I'm not bringing it up. So after 4 journeys and a really hard life, not but something I did, but from talking on the phone, okay, that I can sit back and say, we're at that precipice. And I congratulate you and all the stuff that keep pushing forward in 20 years. And I was not going to miss the first weekend of the opening of your book. I was just not going to. Can we pick that book up again?
Sure.
I was not, thank you. I was not going to miss this. Come on, everybody.
It's quite an accomplishment. I mean, my first book probably took me a good year of really working hard and getting it all together. The second book I wrote faster than that. I wrote it in a very strong hurry. So it got all done in probably like 4 months, but there was a lot of stuff that I'd written before. The third book I got done in like a year. This book took 3 years to write. But I think the reason why is that I just dug a lot deeper into my personal story, and without making it like what we had complaints about with the last one, a small number of complaints that people said, hey, the whole first half of the book is David's personal story. Well, let's cut to a lot of people were complaining about how the third book, that the whole first half of it was my personal journey, but at the same time, I had a number of people coming up to me at conferences saying, David, the thing we like about you the most is your personal stories, your anecdotes. We want to learn more about you. We want to learn more about your life. So in this book, I use self-disclosure sparingly. So there's periods here and there where I tell, part of a chapter will be my personal story, because I think spirituality is a very personal thing.
Exactly.
I mean, your death experiences are very personal. And for me, this book is about telepathic communication with higher intelligence. And
how you became you.
They do ultimately say that we are all one, that there's no separate self. And so ultimately, if you resonate with Jesus, you resonate with Buddha, there is, hopefully, in law of one terms, a being like that has what they would call personality transparency, where they become a messenger of the one creator and they show you who you are by example. They live that example. And honestly, I think we're doing the best we can right now, trying to be an example for others while living very flawed and screwed up human lives. And that's okay.
That's what makes it exciting. You know, if everything was easy, they wouldn't have hired you to do it.
That's true.
Okay, I always tell people, they said, God, the world is so messed up. I said, well, if it wasn't this so messed up, you would just be another unemployed dragon slayer. My concept, but my concept, David, is watch. Certain people, certain beings, you're chosen to come here because the divine believes there's nobody greater than you to be born right now. And if you're paying attention to this show, you are a light bearer. You're trying to figure out how to keep the light lit, like you said, Tom Bodett of the spiritual world. We're light bearers. I always take joy and gratitude in the fact of everybody who came here the same time I came. That if you live in the same time I live, I am thankful to you that you are here. Mm-hmm. Because that means I know why you were chosen, okay? Because you chose to come and to hold a certain perspective and to hold a certain identity with everything that's in you, no matter the cost. That's what you do, no matter the cost. And I have done that with my life, you know, before and after these experiences. I'm not afraid of pain, and I'm not afraid of death, and I'm not afraid of all that BS people try to put off on me. And I'm going to stay focused on fighting for the rights of one of the most helpless groups there is, the dying, okay, and the most unappreciated. So when you look at being here now, and then you choose to come here, you're chosen, but you choose to come here, and you create these obstacles that you personally and emotionally grow from.
So many people, because I have not actually had a near-death experience, which I guess is a good thing, because it involves dying, so that's not fun.
I'm on your side.
But
It's the coming back that's the bitch, David.
almost everybody that has the near-death experience ends up saying that they feel so good when they get to this light that they don't want to leave. They don't want to come back to their body.
Agreed.
Could you describe, maybe in a little more poetic terms or terms we could understand, what is that feeling that you get, and why wouldn't you want to come back to this world once you've had that feeling?
Okay, so there is an event that occurs called the Panoramic Life Review.
Okay.
Once you experience that, okay, once you experience that, it frames everything. It frames why you lived that life. Mm-hmm. Okay? Once that life has been framed, all right, once that life has been framed, all that understanding of what you were doing here, every single breath that you breathe, can people begin, and it's so hard to say this, David, but this is so true. The breath you breathed in, and the time between when you breathe in, you stop, and then you breathe out. The world changes between each breath. When you breathe in into those 8 sinus cavities, then you have to breathe back out. The world changes then. The whole world changes. The whole world around you changes. And then you breathe out. When you have a panoramic life review, you see every breath in and every breath out. You see what you were thinking, why you were thinking it, what your intention was, what your motives were, what your actions were, and all of that, you see it. So once you have released that and reattached to your normal identity as the spiritual being you are, as opposed to David Wilcock.
For somebody who's not necessarily familiar with your work, could we just double click on what does Panoramic Life Review mean? What actually happens to you during that process? Just in simple terms.
You will see your entire life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. You'll watch it from a second-person point of view as though you were your own best friend, so you can see how really funny and dumb you are. Because it takes your best friend, you see yourself from a second-person point of view as if you were your own best friend. Think of how magnificent that is. Then you literally will become every single person that you ever encounter, and you will feel the direct results of your interaction between you and every person you've ever come in contact with. That means no one gets away with anything. And the universe is fair and just. That's the takeaway. Okay? Once you see that, and once you become every person you ever encounter, I realized how many times I'd been hitting myself in the face. Right. You know, it was me. I had to feel what that was. So there's transformations in that. So once that happens, there comes to be a question, and why I wanted to design a program. Because if a person walks through this, the Panoramic Life Review, and they realize everybody who's had one of these experiences has one. Mine are always complex because they measure per breath. You know, mine are about the breath I breathed in and the breath I breathed out. Most people don't care about that, but when you don't have breath and you're fighting to move and you're on fire and burning and paralyzed, you develop a couple of subset psychological patterns of survival that instinctively kick in.
I can imagine.
They instinctively kick in. So, but here's the greatest part about it. In this life, we all want to be loved. And we all want what spiritual beings function on. Appreciation, admiration, and inspiration. We either want to admire or be admired. We want to aspire or be inspired. Or we want to inspire or be inspired. Every single action you take in this life is based on one of those three perspectives of consciousness. These are what spiritual beings do. So think about, at the same time, living in nanoseconds that are aspiring, appreciating, aspiring, and inspirational. Number one. Number two, if we all want to be loved, think about knowing that you love, and the value of your love is a force or an energetic pattern that you can wrap around something, and feeling yourself being wrapped around in divine love. To know that you are loved, not like from like a childlike personality when mom picks you up when you cut your foot, and mom picks you up and holds you in your arms, that kind of feeling, but realize that that feeling when you get back over there, you are so connected. I'm sure somewhere the law of one kicks in that level. But we are individuals. There's an individuality of our personalities, and we all want to love, we all want to be loved, and we all want to love. Well, when you get back over there and you've gone through the life review and you're kind of regrouping and looking at where you go next, because I went to the Crystal Cities once. I went to this place like it was a monastery. There's only the words I could use to describe it, this monastery. The third one that was most important was when you first lift out of your body, that was a level of consciousness in itself. I thought it was a place where you acclimated. By the time I'd had the second one, the same thing happened. Had the same thing happen in the first and in the second. I lifted out of my body, I floated above it, I watched what's going on, I listened to the conversation, I hear this series of chimes, I moved down the tunnel. Got it. The third one, when they were doing brain surgery and they rolled my head over and shaved my head and put my head in a cradle, and they put me under the anesthesia, I was at the end of the bed. I was not floating over the bed. I was standing at the end of the bed, looking at them clean and brown my head and set a drill in this cradle and drill this hole in my head.
You saw this from the outside.
I saw him cut my chest open.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I saw open heart surgery. I've seen it both times.
So if a friend of yours dies, you probably shouldn't talk behind his back because he's going to hear it.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you, nobody misses their funeral.
Nobody misses their funeral.
Because you want to hear what you talk about. And I say that, David, in the likes of, like, remember, spiritual beings are playful. We are playful. We're loving. No matter how you see us, everybody chooses their role and how they think the divine wants them to execute who they believe they are. I think compassionate, caring, and love. Because I went from a brutal narcissist to a hospice volunteer because I've been dead. And I've spent my life at the bedside of dying people. My youngest one was 8, my oldest was 106. And the place that I find compassion is at the bedside of some place where that person has no idea what I already know. I already know what's next, and I know what matters to them in this life. I know what matters. How do you create closure? So I created the Twilight Brigade, one of the largest end-of-life care volunteer programs for dying veterans in American history, and it's now becoming the Transition Brigade because that 25-year run has run its course, and now as a new age is being born and the birth of a new era is here, I have to recreate it, just like every single person that's sitting at their home this afternoon paying attention.
Well, I want to share with you a personal story that is really, really significant to me, and I think adds some contrast to this. My grandfather was dying in a hospital in Albany, New York, and I believe it was Albany Med. And I am an intuitive, and so I remember putting my hands on his feet. His feet were bare, he didn't have socks or anything. And I tuned in to his body, and I was able to see light around his body, but the whole chest area was dark, like there was no light left in his chest. And I realized, okay, he's not gonna last in this body, because if there's no light in the whole chest area, something's really wrong.
Solar plexus.
Now at this point, and again, I was meditating deeply, so I'm in the same receptive trance state where this, the stuff that I talk about in this book was, I'm able to tune in, I'm able to hear angelic voices. There's a lot of that discussed in this, connecting with angelic consciousness. And at that point, in my mind's eye, as I was looking at his chest and there was no light in it, I see probably it had to be at least 50 beings that showed up, and they were men and women, but they were luminous.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all gathered around him. And the strangest thing is that as they showed up and as I became aware of them, he suddenly got, his eyes opened up in the bed, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you hear that music?"
Mm-hmm.
And it does sometimes make me cry to tell that story, but it was interesting that he perceived what I could see visually as these beings
Singing.
as some sort of music, some sort of song. What do you think was happening there?
Very easy. It happens all the time. Watch this, David. 70 years old. And I'm normal, reasonably. But in my life, at 34,000 hours at the bedside, 18 times, I have seen people get out of their bodies and be a little confused, only for a moment. But I've seen people come get people, show up, and the person light up, okay? And then I've seen the room fill with light beings. Whoever that person was, he was probably some trash collector, but whoever that person was, that the whole host came to bring him home. But what I've learned is this. When it's your time and you're afraid, someone comes to get you. I'll give you my story. My mom, she never could quite buy into me being dead, although she was there.
Right.
Okay, so, and like my dad has a story about me lying naked on a slab, that when he told that story, no one that was around there can put that together for me. I wasn't there. I missed it from the ambulance. Okay, from them saying in the ambulance and the paramedics saying, he's gone. Okay, I remember that. And then I remember floating in a hallway trying to find my body. Okay, trying to find it. So watch. My mom, when my mom was 16 years old, she had a 14-year-old sister named Marion. And I'd heard of Marion, okay, because growing up. But my mom was a basketball star, and they were going to a basketball game in the bus, and Marion, the 14-year-old, came up to the front of the bus where all the basketball stars are. And who wants your 14-year-old sister hanging out with your 16-year-old friends? So my mother made her go. She goes down, the bus hits a bump, the emergency door flies open, Marion falls out of the bus, and the back tires run over her at 14.
Really?
Here's the greatness of God, how I see the divine force. When my mom, she told my dad to go get me. Okay, my mom had lupus and Raynaud's. And it was the most horrible last 2 years of her life that a human being could possibly bear. It was the most horrible. And she said, go get Danny. Okay, so I came, and she said, don't let him hurt me anymore. Because then they didn't use lasers. Her lungs were perforating, and they were going down inside and burning, torching her lungs, closing her lungs, okay, by
Right.
cooking them.
God.
She said, don't let him hurt me anymore. And she said, Marion has come. Okay, this is 1984. My mom, horrible, horrible death, unbearable. Holes in her nails falling out. And so I look over my left shoulder and I could see this silhouette being. I could see it just as clear and just as perfect, and she's looking because when I look over her shoulder. And it was Marion. She said, Marion has come. And I said, Mom, let go. She said, take care of your dad, because my dad had to go to the VA, which led me into the Twilight Brigade, the creation of that, because my mom used to go, and then I started taking my dad to the VA. But if there is a glorious nature in all of this as human beings, who greater could have come to my mom to tell her it was time to come home? When she's staying alive for my brother, she's staying alive for my sister, she's staying alive for my dad, she's staying alive for all her best friends, like everybody, you know, moms. Yeah. You know, she's all caring about everybody else instead it's time to go. Here comes Marion. That is resolution and closure so great for my mom that I decided I would be a committed hospice volunteer.
Wow.
Okay, so those beings, whoever he was, his life was to be celebrated. And when you get down to resonant frequencies, you know, when you hear music, it's a bunch of resonant frequencies in sequences on a scale, you know, that can be looked at on an oscilloscope. When you start listening to what music is to theoretical quantum, you know, it's resonance frequencies creating a linear acoustical sequence against the eardrum. Linear acoustical, that means just moving air to the tune of what you're hearing. Well, you could feel it, you couldn't hear it, because you were connected to him and they were singing him home. This happens, I have seen it 18 times, and to finish this point, David, let's say that of those 18 times that I will stand firm on, I will question 3 of them, because it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm the 3rd person there. I've been there 4 hours. This is when you pull shifts, because you can tell who doesn't have closure. And you can tell the horror it's going to happen to them and to their family members if they don't have someone holding the space. Right. You hold the space, and if you can communicate and create closure for that person, it's okay. Nobody has to be there. And a lot of people don't want you there when it's time to go because they don't want to listen to your whining. They don't. Right. I don't want to hear all that. Right. I had enough. My uncle, my last one, my great uncle, you know, in the South you have 3 names, Boy, Bo, or Bubba. Okay? Everybody only has 3 names. So I called him Bubba. He was like 90, you know, and he called me Boy. So I'm going, but you know, this was my friend since I was like 6 years old. You know, he was 50 years older than me, but we were the best of friends. I took him to his Clemson class reunion for 19 straight years. Mm-hmm. I carved my life out, except in the service. I carved my life out that he and I went to Clemson University for his 1921 class reunion, and we did it for 19 years. Okay, so that's how close the fun of him. And he was funnier than hell, and he was a quintessential 19th century gentleman, and he was a mathematics professor. But he is just as cool as you could get. And he said, Boy, he said, lay my suit out. I'm leaving here today. And it's like 6:30, okay? And I said, Bubba, where are you going? He said, if I have to tell you, it ruins everything that I'm doing. Now, this is just him talking to me. Okay?
That's funny.
If I have to tell you, it ruins everything I'm doing. I said, Bubba, we've moved you from the house to a nursing home. The doctor came in here and told you, based on poor circulation, that this is Sunday, and on Wednesday he's going to cut off your right leg.
Jeez.
Watch now. This is my world, David. I have more than 2,000 people but this is being personal.
Right.
I said, Bubba. He said, if you think I'm going to lie in this bed and let them kill me one limb at a time, you have made a mistake.
Right.
Lay my suit out, boy. So I laid his suit out, put his little suit. He got dressed every day, he put a suit on, he put a white shirt on, and sometime he'd change the tie.
Okay.
Okay? And I laid it out, put it just like I'd done for years and years and years. And he said, I need you to go home now. And I said, Bubba, I'll see you tomorrow. He said, okay, but me and Willie will decide that. Willie was his brother, okay? And they were born 1 year apart, December the 5th, 1 year apart.
Wow.
Okay? And Willie had been dead probably 30 years.
Ah.
Willie had been dead about 30 years, and he says, me and Willie will talk about it. I didn't get to the car. I was going to the car, driving home, and the nurse ran out, and she says, Daniel, you need to come back in here. He waited for me to walk out the door, and he let go.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And
Natural death at that point.
just let go. He had
Wow.
enough. So I studied all of that. I studied the conversations like I do everybody. I study what gives a person that place, power, and time and point where they can let go based on choices that they make.
You know, let's cut to this real quick. It's kind of phenomenal that you're able to hold space for people in that process. I think most of us, the idea of being at somebody's bedside while they're dying is an incredibly emotional. It's a grief process. There's anger, there's fear,
Everything.
there's sadness.
Grief, bereavement, loss.
How have you been able to navigate those emotions to be present with people 2,000 different times for this?
More than 2,000.
Or 3,000 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
2011.
2,011 times.
Because I know what's next. I know what's next. And you cannot tell me about pain. You cannot run some story about pain off on me.
Right.
Okay, you can't. And you can't do any of that to me. And I know nobody dies. And I know there's an art form called closure that I created a program that does it. And I'm creating another program now. Quietly in the world, I help modify palliative and end-of-life care programming. I'm working at doing the VAs. I'm helping them. I understand the nature of it because I've been on both sides of the veil, and I've spent the last 42 years studying death and how you die. And what happens is we're all going to be hospice volunteers sooner or later. And the more you know about it, the more powerful your life becomes. If you think you could scare me into staying in my house on a spring day when there's loquats in the trees and tangerines so good, you can kiss my whatever it is. I don't care. I'm going to die eating that fruit, and I don't care. If it's my time, David, it's my time. But I got to promise you, this nonsense is not real to the point of the divinity of our meaning and purpose in this life. And it has reinforced so much to me the illusion that we have allowed to be created, and we call it normal society.
That's true.
When I saw a picture the other day, of a boat passing through a plastic in the Caribbean, and it was 5 miles wide, and it was more than a mile deep.
Oh my God.
And it's bottles and trash floating in the ocean. And then I heard there was a story that the Pacific had one that's from Fukushima, that Fukushima's heading to the coast of Seattle, okay? And I haven't seen a picture of it, but I heard the conversation about it. It makes me stop and realize, what in the world are we all thinking? What are we thinking? And all of this stuff is is the changing of our energies and people becoming aware of what's really happening as opposed to the stories we're being fed to believe. I don't believe anything that I see in mainstream. I'm not going to believe it. But I can watch. When I saw two guys get in a Tesla electric car with some little pimp outfits on, not that big old clunky stuff, and ride over to a little satellite and take off and hook up to the space station. That was a phenomena, no question. But let me tell you something. To watch that rocket land on a floating platform called a barge in the Atlantic Ocean was absolutely believable. Absolutely 100%. That was unbelievable because the potential for where we can go, what's the moon mission, the potential for where we can go and what we do and find the answers to so much of what you talk about. Mm-hmm. And to find those answers and to create that linkage, okay? And to look at what we are in this world, we have to change it. And that's why I said, David, we're winning, everybody. We're winning. We are holding the ground that we're supposed to hold. It's just keeping our hearts open. Keeping our hearts open, staying focused. That not to fall for an illusion or not to become delusional. Make your own choices about what to do, but let it not be driven by fear or what everybody else is telling you you're supposed to do, because it's not working. Look at Sweden. Look at whether we should have. I was laughing the other day, and it's funny. They decided that staying at home was worse than getting out.
Right. It's more communicable. Right.
You get more, everybody's going to get it at home, or it's going to intensify the damage done because everybody's spreading it back and forth to each other.
You're not airing the house out enough.
And you're not getting outside. We are instantaneous beings. We breathe in stuff that'll kill us, and then we build an antibody to it, and then we breathe it out, and it dies. If we're not interacting that way on a continuous basis, we are limiting our scope and ability as humans to react. Who in the world? If I could sit outside today and I had to worry about whether I was going to get coronavirus that dies at 80 degrees,
right.
And I could sit outside today and realize that if it's 80 degrees or 84 degrees and I'm breathing in and out, I'm killing it as I breathe in and out.
Right.
I'm killing it based on what the science says. So what am I doing? I'm just thankful for the people who took their afternoon to know, like, you've been showing up to this group of people for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that then in the afternoon that I get a chance to join and to celebrate being New York Times best-selling authors and to have had that drive in the market and to see your book drop. I mean, for me and everybody else that's out there that's a writer and everybody who dreams of publishing their novel, when you hold that book in your hands and you know it dropped and you finally got it yesterday. And,
you got it too, right here.
Mm-hmm, and you got it. Well, look, this is 25 years ago, but I was celebrating that feeling, David. I was celebrating that feeling because who do you get to share it with? Elizabeth. But who cares? Every one of us. Success, and it's informative. But to make it in the top 2,500 books on Amazon, which has got 4 million titles, you should be very proud of that. And I'm once again thankful to everybody who bought it, and I'm thankful for everybody who will buy it. So please, everybody, make an impact by getting this book. I'm not getting paid for this, but I'm going to support what I see is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we actually hit #1 in UFOs, #1 in dreams on Amazon, so it actually did go, and it is going up there. So, But another thing that's going on, and I want to make sure that we do a little meditation and take the
I'm
opportunity for
100%.
this live audience.
Please.
But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the program that you and I are designing. So in case you're not aware of this, Danny and I have decided, along with Elizabeth, that we're going to do a 5-week class. It's based off of the same kind of format that we had with the one that we just did, The Great Awakening. We don't actually have the webpage up yet because we're still ironing out the final kinks of exactly what we're going to talk about. And for me, the challenge is to make it completely unique from what we just did. I don't want to do a whole lot of overlapping material for those who just watched our other class, and we want to thank you very much for participating and being involved. So what we're going to be doing with Daniel is we're going to be here every Sunday, like now, and we're going to have a series of discussions that are going to be supported with slides. We're going to talk about things like the Tibetan rainbow body and the practices of how they were activating the Tibetan rainbow body, this very strange thing about supposedly that there's 160,000 people documented in Tibet, Bhutan, Nepal, and southwestern China having transformed themselves when they are ready to leave this earth into a being of light, that they literally activate a light body and they don't leave behind a physical corpse of any kind. Well, this is a very fascinating topic. Another section we're going to have is on the deep state / Illuminati, and you have some very unique and proprietary information on that we're going to be getting into that probably isn't good to go over normal public videos like this. Let's just put it that way. But you're going to learn a lot more about Danny that you did not know.
I've been around.
Severely classified programs, let's just put it that way. We're also going to be going into the science of DNA. We're going to do at least one big module on that. All of the fascinating information suggesting that DNA is an actual emanation from quantum mechanics itself, that DNA appears to be something that emerges from the background of space and time itself. We're going to have a whole big discussion on that. We're going to talk about tangible academic research into the afterlife, the work of Dr. Michael Newton, who broke it down into 10 or 11, depending on how you analyze it, 10 or 11 distinct stages. We'll go through those stages. We'll talk about what's happening. And we're going to have a whole module on the law of one. And really, again, our focus is going to be on ascension, because everything that's happening in the world right now is leading up to some kind of very monumental event that we haven't seen yet. And that's the underlying bottom line of this book and his book, and, well, maybe not that book per se, but the knowledge of the near-death experience, in my view, is getting all of us ready on a collective level for the idea that we could enter into a spiritual reality.
There is no question that that's true. Okay, once you brought the law of one into play, because also the Panoramic Life Review, if you grip this and you follow the course, because I'm a big person on courses and I'm a big person on homework. I'm sorry, but I expect you to do certain things, okay? If you're going to achieve the goal, then you take the intention and the reason for why you do it, and you make sure you're ready for the next module. You know, because we have to transform ourselves, and where we've been is either we've been fooled or we've been saved. And as I look at it, I think we've been deceived to a certain degree based on the information put forward in the beginning and the information that we see now. We have been deceived, okay? So we need to start over fresh. We need to lock in, get ourselves focused, show up every Sunday, get ready, do the homework, mostly breathing. And I talked to Elizabeth about certain kinds of forms of stretching, and in the stuff that she does on a daily routine to include that in the pattern so that people really get a good look on starting over and refreshed as we're coming out from under whatever this is we've been under. We need to be brand new as we do it. We need to be refocused, recommitted, looking at ourselves from the spiritual point of view as well as the informative point of view that David brings forth, and Elizabeth's rhythmic nature of helping you find alignment.
So, yeah, and I think that another important point is that you, Danian, recommended that we be really generous, and so everybody who has already taken my Great Awakening class, we're slashing 33% of the price off the top. So that's a very significant discount, makes it a lot easier for people to get in. But this is going to be, we're going to have slides, we're going to have, you know, the Sunday talks, and
Homework.
we're going to really get even more into the philosophies and the practices, the spiritual disciplines that will help you really prepare yourself and navigate what already is what I consider to be the first wave of ascension. It's really, really phenomenal. Let's cut to this angle for a minute. It's really, really phenomenal that so many of the things that I've been talking about, so many of the prophecies that you and I have talked about on these panels for the last 20 years, they're all coming true or have come true.
All right.
The massive rioting, the global economic collapse, the prophecies of having to stay in your house and needing stored food and water in the house that you wouldn't want to go outside.
Bankruptcy.
All these things have happened.
Economic bankruptcy.
That's right. And so I don't think anybody can feasibly say that we're just going to go back to the way it was.
Never going to happen.
It's just not realistic at this point.
Right.
And what we're seeing, I believe, is African Americans are now having their moment, like with Me Too. You know, this is the Me Too thing was for women. Now we're in something that's really for black people, and I'm really happy to see that. I don't like any type of conflict and disagreement and discord. I think that we are all bigger than that. We should be, at least, and so the ultimate point of ascension is that our planet is going through a really profound transformation that leads to so much that we've always wanted to see. Lasting peace, much better technology, real harmonious interactions with one another, harmonious interactions with our spirit, getting in touch with your soul.
But also this too, David, brutality. I think that I don't see what happened with the guy in Minneapolis. I am deeply, profoundly sorry. But brutality or police brutality doesn't have anything to do with racism. And that's the point that I'm happy about. But we have to focus on that.
Right.
This is something that has come to light that you try to make it racist. But they're doing it to the nature of being the protector of the public is greatly flawed, watching one or more of these videos of police with their knees in the necks of every color person.
Right.
You know, when they showed the thing with the guy who happened in Minneapolis, which my heart goes out to that family, but when you showed it, there was like 25 others around the country over the last 3 or 4 years with the same technique in different cities, Chicago, Seattle, Miami somewhere, New York, New Jersey, where this same technique was being used by officers, not just this one guy. So when you see that, we have to think about that. I mean, what has society created? What have we allowed to be created that has put us in a place where they had that 75-year-old guy? Here's how I saw the police pushed him down.
Right.
He hit his head and busted his head open. Well, when I think about that, I am that guy, okay? If they're yelling at me for 2 blocks, then I need to move out of the way.
True.
Okay? Then that's what he should have done. Or they should have been 2 of those officers that stepped out of formation and put him out of the way. Okay? I mean, he doesn't have the right that if you're clearing that path, then you clear that path. Instead of being as though you're setting yourself up for something to happen. You know, I would move out of the way. Okay, so when I look at that and those issues, all this stuff has to be addressed, and we, in the ascension, as you call it, the birth of a new age that I call it, and we are at that crucial point now to get our stuff focused and in order. And our game plan, and like you always make fun of me, it's got to have a structure.
Structure.
And that's to have a strategy. Sorry, everybody. Things have to be structured. You have to have a strategy. You have to have goals, and you have to succeed at those goals. And if you come to this program, I'm going to push you to be as magnificent a spiritual being as I can possibly push you to be. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we really want to make this the best of what we have to offer from all of us, from Elizabeth, from me, from Danny. And so we're going to have slides. We're going to have a lot of really mind-expanding content, including some things that you've definitely never heard before. We do want to make it worth your while, and I think it's going to be really exciting. We have figured out how we're going to resolve this audio issue. I'm going to have to get a different interface that has more inputs, and but that's fine. We'll get that overnighted. We'll have it probably, hopefully, by Wednesday. So we'll never have to deal with this audio issue again. But, you know, Danian, we've been talking for a long time. I think we're past 2 hours now. And so
You need to
how
do the
do you
meditation.
feel about leading a global meditation for peace? And I'll run the bulls while you do that. Would you like to do that?
No, I'd rather you do it.
You want me to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Change the mic up.
Sure, we can do that.
I think you do a good job of that.
Let me mute the thing real quick. Okay. So let's get started. I just ask now that you put both feet flat on the floor. Take a nice deep breath. And allow yourself to breathe in and just let it go. And then once more, just breathe in very gently and let it go. And as you allow your breath to create a path you can follow, going deeper and deeper, following that path, becoming ever more perfectly, beautifully relaxed. Just letting go of the burdens that you've carried with you, the pains, the fears, the prejudice, the lack of patience, the lack of forgiveness, the lack of understanding. In this moment, as you focus on your breath, and as you allow that path of breathing to take you deeper and deeper into your authentic self, you find yourself feeling so relaxed, so deeply at peace. So deeply transformed. And I ask that you imagine, as you're deeper and deeper with your breathing, following that path, I ask that you imagine a light that is warm and inviting, a light that is absolute, pure, unconditional love. A light that invites you to remember something about yourself. You have a name. You have a purpose. You have a reason for being alive on earth. You are not weak. You are becoming stronger and stronger as you go deeper and deeper, merging with this light, merging with this wonderful consciousness that just adores you, that loves you so much. And there is forgiveness. There is a sense of humor about everything that you did in your life that you thought was a mistake. All those times that you felt that you could not be forgiven, for the pain is too deep, the hurt is too strong, the transgressions too everlasting. In this light, you are totally accepted. There is a remembrance as you're so deeply relaxed that there really are no mistakes. There are only opportunities. And the light causes you to reframe events that you could never forgive yourself for. By helping you to understand the perfect balance that you live in. That any hurt you caused to yourself or others was balanced. Therefore, in the light, you are not afraid anymore. You are not afraid of some mysterious secret force waiting to condemn you to a purgatory. You are not afraid of stepping up and claiming your armor of light. You're not afraid of the future and of really being alive, jumping into your life and taking back the power that is rightfully yours by divine decree. The power to live a life of financial prosperity, kindness, safety, mutual respect, brotherly and sisterly love. You have everything right now as you breathe deeply in your heart. Everything is in your heart. And you can transform yourself today. You can embody a change that you want to see. You can live the promise of the great spiritual masters, treading lightly on the earth, your feet barely touching the ground, being a blessing in others' lives, speaking kindly, and not listening to that impulse that wants to lash out, to be judgmental, to be condescending, to be proud, self-righteous, arrogant, holier than thou, and demeaning. In this loving, accepting light, all of these things that we may have said or done seem so much less important. Now you are tuning into something. You are tuning in to the actual nature of the universe, the living light that is conscious, that surrounds you at all times. And you feel yourself slipping deep into this gratitude, the knowingness that all fear is rooted in the sense of your imminent extinction. Examine for a moment the reactive mind. Examine how reactive you have been. Examine, without judging yourself, just examine how quickly you could fly off the handle, lose your temper, say something you didn't really mean, speak unkindly, roll your eyes, and act disrespectfully to the people you love. But all of these things are childish. And that doesn't represent you. It doesn't represent the nobility that you carry. You are such a noble, royal, perfected, grandiose, magnificent being. You are not threatened by anyone speaking about you in a negative way. You are not threatened by people's shame projections when they have unresolved trauma in themselves and they can only see that in you. You're becoming very wise. And you realize that when you get upset at someone else, you're not living in truth. Anger, judgment, jealousy, these are not real emotions. They are born out of an illusion that you are separate, an illusion that you may not be protected, an illusion that you have to scrap and fight and tear and claw for your piece of the pie. None of this is true. In this light, the world is changing. And as you are so deeply relaxed, you are helping to change this world in this moment. Envision now all those economic problems that we see resolving as if by a miracle. We've heard about the coming new financial system. We've heard about trillions of dollars that have already been seized that will be released back into the economy. We all have a right to have health and prosperity, family, friends, and love, respect, admiration from others. There is no reason for this planet to have suffering and pain. There is no reason for us to labor endlessly for such small amounts of money so that we barely survive. By leading us through this change, we go deeper and deeper. By breathing even more deeply, we go deeper and deeper. By relaxing and smiling inside, we go deeper and deeper. By allowing all of our muscles to melt into warm liquid pools, we go deeper and deeper. By allowing ourselves to tune in to some higher love, we go deeper and deeper. By letting ourselves release that which does not serve us in our highest good, we go deeper and deeper. And we ask you, dear light, give us the way, give us the truth. Show us how we can be better of service to this planet, to one another. Prick up our ears that we may listen carefully to the inner murmurings of spirit. Give us the guidance and the direction to know forthrightly how we can move on this path and co-create the planet that we deserve. Let us learn how to be present for others when they are in their pain without being reactive. Let us learn to embrace them, learn to respect them. That we are all breathing the same air, we are all one consciousness, emanations from a quantum field that creates DNA, creates life from an intelligent, omnipresent omniscience. And a light that beams through all areas of darkness, revealing everything that has been going wrong, identifying those who are the true perpetrators of these atrocities, trying to divide and conquer, trying to separate us by skin color, by gender, by age, by nationality, by religion. And we no longer need this experience. We converge in unity, we hold hands in fraternity, we revivify the promises of the ancient ones that we shall be like gods here on earth, in our bodies, living the dream of the promised ascension and golden age. It is at our fingertips, and we need only stretch forth our hand and claim our inheritance. For in the grandest sense, you are the light, you are the love, you are the one infinite creator, and this is as it was, as it is now, and as it always shall be, and nothing and no one can ever take that from you. And so it is. Now I ask you to slowly come back into your body. My hand completely fell asleep and went numb. And I have tears in my eyes.
Did a good job, David.
Thank you.
Where's Elizabeth?
Well,
Elizabeth, you need to come over here.
she's shy today.
She's beautiful.
So it's a really good thing for us to all focus on how we can be better of service to each other and to this planet, and how we can create the future that we want to see.
And lay out a new strategy. The one that we have had is not working. It is not working. We are trashing a planet.
That's true.
We're trashing. We're not paying attention to each other. We're letting people starve. We have to stop it, everybody. And that means we have to stop and refocus on ourselves. That's what I'm dedicated to. You will never, until you get a true grip on the magnificence of, like David said, that you are, you never really see what you're living for. You just let each day go and let whatever's on television control you, or whatever interaction you have with your phone. That's just not the way it's going to be. It has to be, because all that is designed to keep you focused on looking at the world around you. You know, to keep you focused here as opposed to here. And that is not working for us, and it's well planned. I saw a thing last night, David, where a guy who was a hardcore liberal Democrat, explain how Google could affect 15 to 40 million votes.
Oh, yeah.
And he was explaining exactly how they could and maybe they did do it. Well, that stopped me cold. Realized that we are so in a position to be influenced. So I want to thank you for that meditation. I mean, the show is yours, and as you're creating it, I wanted people to hear that voice, and it goes out on my Facebook. And that was a really good meditation. It's about us coming together, losing fear,
Mm-hmm.
breathing deep, being structured and focused, and have a strategy for our goals, to make this world a better place for compassion, a better place so that we can compassionately live in it lovingly together. And I know it's possible. Not that I believe it.
And I think it's pretty amazing that we were able to do 2 hours straight like this, not making each other laugh, not calling each other silly names or making the jokes that we always make.
But it was difficult.
We did a good job.
I love you, Dave. And I love you, Elizabeth. And I'm thankful.
All right, everybody, that's all the time we have. We're going to get the description at the bottom of the video with the link to our website once it goes up. The class is going to be called Ascension Path of Light, and we hope to see you there. We will be giving announcements out as this goes on. You can come in to my website, the main website you'll see at the bottom right of the screen here, divinecosmos.com. Sign up with your email. This is really, really important. We are constantly battling censorship, suppression. The email is the only thing that we know will really save us from deplatforming, which could happen at any moment. It might even happen because of what we already talked about today. I don't know.
I tried not.
But anyway, if you pop your email address in, we're going to be putting out a lot of stuff about this upcoming class. The class is going to be called Ascension Path of Light. I believe the website will be ascensionpathoflight.com. And so when we have that up over the next few days, you'll be able to go there. And again, also, Awakening in the Dream. This is like, if you ever wanted to read one of my books, this is the one to read. I think this is the definitive work. This is my Beethoven's Fifth. This is my Handel's Messiah. I'm very, very excited about it, and I hope that you will be too. We're getting almost completely nonstop 5-star reviews online right now. It's really, really great. So anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but thanks everybody for being here today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let me go hit the off button.